where I get the opportunity to discuss the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leaders across the country. My name is Teresa Palacio Smith, and I'm Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And this show is about amplifying the important work that many leaders are doing within their organizations and beyond. And there is no other person that I would want as my first guest on this show than the person that first hired me to the role of DE&I officer, and that is Gino Blefari. And for years, people who know Gino have called him the real estate GOAT, which means the greatest of all times. And that's because Gino's record speaks for itself. So when Gino, right, when you first started in the business, he ranked the #1 real estate agent in all of Northern California. He then started a C21 brokerage, which was also ranked #1 most successful C21 brokerage in the world, where 9 of the top 11 offices in the network he managed. He then started Intero, which became one of the 6 largest real estate brokerages in North America, at which point he was approached by Berkshire Hathaway, which said, hey, let me buy your company so you can now become the CEO of HSF Affiliates, which is the franchise arm of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And then shortly after, he was elevated to president and CEO of Home Services of America and chairman of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. But Gino has always resisted being called the GOAT. You have. But now that Stefan Swampole of T360, who ranks all leaders, ranked you as #1 in the country, you have to finally accept that you are the GOAT. And that's why you're my first guest, Gino. You are an industry icon. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, T. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the nice introduction. I'll give you a few more details on it so you have it just down exact next time, but all good on that. It was pretty close.
Well, good. Tell us.
Yeah.
So, and Gino, I still remember as if it were yesterday, the first time that we met, and it was at NAREPS. And for those who don't know who NAREP is, it's the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And I was on the corporate board of governors and actually was going to be the president of the organization. And you had just joined HSF Affiliates as president and CEO. And that, again, the Berkshire Home Services franchise brand. And this was back in 2014. I think you knew even back then how important it was to hire someone for the role of DE&I. And, tell me why. Why was that so important? And why did you capture that even back then?
It was interesting because if I think back then, even when you gave your title of Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, and I also had in mind, and I still think you do this a lot, but I wanted you to be a very advocate for women in leadership too. Like maybe that makes your title too long, but that's how I always look at you, as diversity, equity, inclusion, and women in leadership as a C-level executive now with our firm there. But initially I thought of the position of the role that would be more external than internal, because at the time it wasn't really even popular being internal. But I had attended NAREP, I had attended ARIA, I had attended the different VA rep, LGBTQ, all of the different ones, and I would obviously saw you, even though I first met you at it was NAREP, right? NAREP, yeah,
that was it.
And I can remember again how enthusiastic you were. And here you were, I think, working in the relocation department of our company, our great company, Atlanta, that Deanne, so superbly leads, and all the great people there. I thought, wow, this enthusiasm, your connection with people, you introduced me to so many people there. I thought right there, I knew I had the perfect person for a position that I knew we kind of needed it, but it was more on the external side than the internal side. And then as things evolved, I saw how important it was to have it as part of the fabric and part of the onboarding process and everything that we do to just support everyone and make an environment that's comfortable for everyone, regardless of what your race, religion, whatever it was, right? Whatever you believed, we wanted you to be comfortable here and know that you were totally supported. And T, you just did as I can say, you did a terrific job. And again, thank you for having me on the debut on your first show. That's really terrific. But I've been, when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm going to call you the GOAT. Okay. You've just done a tremendous job.
Well, one of the things that you shared with me, Gino, was the fact that you grew up and you had issues with reading. And I think that is why, that was a tough time, because you were dyslexic, which happens to be a neurodiversity. A lot of people don't realize, which is part of DEI. And I think that's what made you so connected to also understanding how, people struggle to be accepted, right?
Yeah. And just the paranoia of having to like read out loud or something like that was always something that, always hung over me. And I was concerned, but there's always a silver lining to everything. Because of that, my memory became very sharp, because I had to use that part of my brain to remember in sixth grade, Teresa, and I've never told you this story before, but we would have to read out loud, okay, and get graded on it. So I virtually memorized the first chapter of the book. And when he said, do we have any volunteers? I raised my hand, right, immediately, because I had the first thing memorized, and I just went through the whole thing. But, the other thing on where I first noticed a little bit, we can go back with every generation as they came to America, and me having grandparents that came from Italy, right? And my dad's first language being Italian. And I, there was a little bit of prejudice against Italians, as it has been with, the Irish or the Mexicans or any of the, all of the races is in.
All the immigrants, right? There's always an area where you see that. And I feel because of that, you've always had that acceptance as well.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was in second grade, and being, Italian, so I have an olive skin, and then being out in the sun all the time, there was this one Mexican kid, Richard Ortiz, and myself, and I can remember, and everybody else, blonde hair, blue eyes, where I grew up there in Silicon Valley, right? One black person in the entire school, one Asian person in the entire, right? And, maybe one Mexican person in the entire school. But in any case, I can remember the teacher saying, maybe they called me Gene at the time, maybe Gene and Richard, because they're little brownies, but, made some comment that I kind of, till this day, I kind of remembered, right? So I think that, and then, growing up here in the Bay Area, Willie Mays, a wonderful black player, was my idol. I just had that natural support for the underdog too.
Right. I love that, Gino. And one of my favorite things that I share with so many groups that I speak to, because I think it's really the connectivity that we have with people that might be different, right? That you always do are the interview questions. And I share that when I talk on stage, when I talk to other people, how really critical those interview questions are, because they are also a way to connect with people that you don't know very well. And you do that with our teams, and that you find commonality with others. Tell me more about how you came up with those questions. Sure. And there's 18, right?
Yeah, 18. I call them 18, and we call them inner, and not interview, but inner, INNER, interview, which I know you know that, but they're interview questions. And it's interesting things is one of the things over time of studying championship teams and sports and things like that, I found out that the closer they were together, the more connected they were, the better they played. You're playing for the guy next to you or the gal next to you, right? You're trying to get better. And I wish I could say I actually created those questions. In I believe early in my career, I took a Dale Carnegie course. Okay. And in that course, as part of that course, actually an extension of that course, because so funny thing is, I took the same Dale Carnegie course that Warren Buffett took. Right. I remember looking in Warren's office and all the different things that he could have on his wall. And he had that certificate of this Dale Carnegie course. And I had the certificate of the same Dale Carnegie course, but in one of those supplemental courses, they taught you the how to connect with people and to get to actually know them. And so it was 18 questions. What do you do? How'd you get started? Where are you originally from? What's your current family situation? What was your family situation growing up? What else do you besides work? Were you active in school? Give me a memory from your childhood. Look at your life as a radar scope. There'll be highs, there'll be lows. Give me one of the highs. What does that tell you about yourself? Give me one of the lows, which can be very emotional. And of course, when you're meeting with people, you can feel the ones that may not be comfortable to ask. And even if you're going through that, I don't say I'm going to ask you 18 questions. They just kind of flow, but I always let them know, if something's ever uncomfortable, you don't answer it. You do whatever you want. But things like, what advice would you give a young person? How do you want to be remembered, your legacy, those types of things? What does the future hold for you? It's so funny. I'll do that. We do that with all of our CEOs, and we've done it together, you and I, right? And I know
We have.
I
You
remember.
get to know your teammates so well. I think that's really and you find the connection. And I think that's what's really important, especially in the D&I space. And another thing that I love is your blog. And I have actually, I know you've been writing it for several years. It has a huge following. And I know that it's usually about your weekly travels, but I also love that you cover important D&I topics. You talk about people, books that you've read. Tell me a little bit about why is that one important to you?
We'll jump to that. I just wanted to finish one more point on, I remember doing the 18 questions with you and you saying, what does the future hold for you? And I said, grandkids. And I could, it moved your paradigm, because we were thinking that was going to be all business. That it says, what does the future hold for you? I go, grandkids. Of course, none of the girls are married yet, but that's what my future is there. So getting back to the blog, specifically, what was your?
So how did you get started with the blog, and why, you cover topics? That's what you like. I mean, I know that you talk about books and different things with your blog, and that's important because you do talk D&I as well, because you cover different holidays. I mean, that's really what I tune into. And I also learn a lot about different characters that I wasn't even aware of, Gino, that you've covered in your blog.
Yeah. And it started out way at Intero. Okay. And I wanted to have a way where I was adding value, and I was the CEO of Intero. So it would naturally be leadership, and was trying to be always adding value every week. And it also is just in business, in the real estate business, you have to find a way to stay in regular contact with people. And that's how the blog kind of like came about. And then it evolved over time. And then when I became part of home service, HSF, the franchise group, and my main job and my highest and best use still to this day, like yours, is sometimes being on the road and be in front of people that we can help, right? We help people achieve their goals faster than they would in our absence, right? That's what you do. That's what I do. And the blog was a great way to say, this week, my travels found me in Las Vegas for such and such, and then to Dallas, then to here, then to there. So it was a way for people to see, who I was going. I had a great way of being able to make that trip part of the blog too, because we usually do a picture of where I was at, and then the blog was whatever topic happened to be, whatever was going on. Like, you won't know it, but when tomorrow, when my blog comes out, it's Steph Curry, because Steph Curry, right? Leadership lessons from Steph Curry, but because he has gotten so much publicity when he won that little golf tournament and made the hole in one, and they just released The Underdog. It just came out on the 21st. So that'll be top of mind for people. And so I try to make it as interactive and as lively as I can. When Charlie Munger talked about at the Berkshire shareholder meeting, And I know you had to hear your foot. There was some reason why you couldn't come to the shareholder meeting this year. But Charlie Munger, when he talked about the importance of biographies and studying from people and learning, that was really huge. I went on that. But then when the diversity, equity, inclusion came in, that's where, Martin Luther King or, the wonderful, there's just all the different people.
You also cover events like NARA, NARAB. Anytime you're there, and I will tell you, people love it because they get to see themselves in those pictures, whether you're at ARIA, you don't just cover, hey, I was at ARIA. You talk about in depth who you saw, what the topics were, what really kind of piqued your interest during that conference. And I think the exposure really just shows the connection you have with our groups and the trade organizations that we are really partnered with. And one of the things that we started this year, Gino, that I'm so proud of, and I'm so happy because you always show up, and that's our Diversity Meets platform. And that's we use that to advance D&I initiatives across the many companies that we operate, and we always meet monthly. So for those that are not familiar with this, we have guests that come in, and you have made it a priority to join these calls yourself. And I really, again, honor that. Why is that so important as well for you?
One of the things, if you ask me what's the most important thing or thing that we can do to help people become more diverse and more accepting of everything, and that's really just exposure to it, right? Just that exposure to it. And that is a huge reason. We have a lot of CEOs that are on that call, from all around the country that get on there. And so two reasons. Number one, we need to be reminded more often than we really need to be trained. So that's one reason. Number two, as a leader, we all set the example, right, of what we want to do. So you can't preach diversity and then not be on the call, right? You have to, just walk the walk or walk the talk, go to be. So, mainly just to show, and here's the other thing, and I haven't really told you this, but you do such a great job and you put your heart and soul into what you do. I am there really to support you. Okay. It's a great cause and it's important, but when you have someone, okay, that does extraordinary things, okay, to me, you recognize that. And one of the ways that I can recognize you is by showing up and supporting you. So that's right. That's from the heart. That's the reason why.
And it really speaks to your, commitment as well, Gino, to making sure that we do move D&I initiatives across, all of our platforms, all of our companies, and that's, top for you as well. And you've always championed, all of the initiatives that we're involved with, including a phenomenal one that we're involved with, which is the National Book City with the National Federation of State and High School Associations, which we're honored to be one of the only companies in the real estate industry that actually is involved in this program, which Johnny Johnson actually spearheaded. And it's really based off his book, From Athletics to Engineering, 8 Ways to Support Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for All. And for those who don't know who Johnny Johnson is, would you mind sharing his background and how you developed such a deep friendship, and why is supporting this big initiative that connects us on a national scale so important in the D&I space as well, Gino?
Yeah. So first, let me just start out with the wonderful human being that Johnny Johnson is, and it was sometime back at Intero, and I don't know specifically what he was doing, but my history with Dwight Clark, the Catch, and my, one of my very, very best friends, and Ronnie Lott and the whole 49er group as being a huge fan. And so I was first attracted to Johnny because he was a first round draft pick out of Texas to the Rams, who was the Rams were a rival at the time of the 49ers, right? So I followed Johnny through that. And, I'm not sure if it was 10 or 11 years in the NFL, which is a very hard thing. I think the average span in the NFL is maybe 3 years, besides it being almost impossible to get there. But just a great human being. And we started meeting for breakfast. And it was almost kind of like a fellowship breakfast where we just talk about the week. I talk about real estate. We talk about business. We talk about life, just in general, and what book we're reading, what happened in the news, that type of thing. And the friendship just grew over time. Now, he's always been, very, very much interested in diversity, equity, inclusion. Of course, he wrote the book. And I think what even made it even more important was remember a few years back when I read the book, The Color of Law, that one really, really opened my eyes. When we ever talk about books, if you ever want a book on diversity, equity, inclusion, or to open your eyes on how we have mistreated people of color, right?
Yes.
Book, The Color of Law, is just so good. But in any case, so that's with Johnny, and he got very interested in he does all sorts of things. Johnny, not only is he a football player, okay, he's drafted by the Phillies as a catcher, okay, to play professional baseball. Now, if he was a catcher, he would have been the fastest player in all of Major League as a catcher. He's also a top-notch tennis player, and he's also a track star. I think he ran track stars with the guys that were at the Olympics, right? And so just an amazing athletic background. But even as great as he is with athletics, if you took him as a human being and a person, he's a very righteous, good man. And I get I'm happy. Again, just like yourself, you're happy to support people when you see them doing extraordinary things. You want to recognize that.
And he is. I mean, he's done. I didn't know that about him, so I'll have to just let him know I learned something new about Johnny's background. And again, that's a really important project that we're involved with, and I think it's even going to have some great even following through the NFL. So we'll see. Stay tuned. So I know that one of the things that you do so well is that you engage a lot of our, your direct reports, the company, to participate in initiatives in our organization. And, tell me, why is that so important as well? And you kind of talked about it earlier, but I think we really kind of want to pin down how important it is for our leaders in our organizations.
I'm going to keep going back to its exposure. I think people are basically good, and sometimes they just don't understand everything. And like the training you did at home with diversity training, which was a NAR course, right? And we had everyone on our leadership team on the unbiased,
Unconscious bias, implicit bias.
Yeah, the unconscious bias training. That's just making people aware. I mean, it opened my eyes to different things. And then what happens is it opens your eyes and you notice everywhere else. We happen to notice, like I can remember saying at one of the things that we were doing back in the old days on some sort of promotion way back in the early days of Berkshire, Hathaway, HomeServices, the brand, says, well, hey, that's not a very diverse picture that you have out there. And they're like, come on, Gino, get with it. You know what I mean? But just because you're aware, and now you make everyone aware, right?
Exactly. Even in the hiring that you do, that's really critical. And also in a lot of the self-ID campaigns that we run at the organization, I think that's, that's absolutely critical. And you lead by example, which is the most important part of it, Gino. The other thing that I love about you, I think is really important, is that you not just mentor, but you actually, I learned this word recently, it's sponsor people. Sponsorship is where you actually pull someone out and elevate them. And I'm going to tell you, that's what you did for me. You did it for Nina. I hope Nina's watching. Nina Fabry, who works with us in the Exceed partnerships. You've done it for so many people. Talk to me about the power of that, and why do you feel that that's really critical for organizations to also adapt?
Well, it's critical for organizations to adapt, but what is more critical to have the people that actually are showing that interest to want to do it. So, part of the thing about being a leader or even a manager is the desire to want to do it. So it's being able to see people like yourself that want to make an impact, and me being in a position to put you in that position. It's kind of like the platform. At Intero, I had a platform of maybe 2,000 agents that I could talk to, right? But then I became part of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, the brand, and now the platform became 50,000 agents. And then I became part of Home Services of America, and the platform becomes even bigger. So, you know, to me, when you have that platform and you have people that are doing extraordinary things and doing things for good cause, you find a way to recognize them.
Well, and you've done, I'm telling you, because I can give example of so many leaders that you've elevated that you realize, wow, you know, they're here, but I know that I see them. I see what they're doing. I see what they're capable of. And you put me in a situation where I didn't know what I was doing. So I just have to thank you, because you gave me, you had confidence in me even when I didn't have it in myself. And that's really what has taken me to the level where I am today. I really feel that you are the, you know, the wind behind my wings, or under my wings, because you really do that for so many of us. And I think leaders need to do that and recognize it, not just mentor, because I think mentorship's great, but I think when you say, and you said it best, I'm the leader, I can make things happen. I can make change happen. I'm going to do it because I see it. And I think that, you know, is something that I just want to make sure you understand how important it is for others to do as well. One of the things too that I love about you, that you taught me, which I'm not very good at, so I am now more of an audible reader, is books. And you kind of recommended The Color of Law. And I think that, to me, you actually told me about the book. I didn't tell you about the book.
Yeah, I got it through all of HomeServices. I forget where I saw it, and I went out and I listened to it, and had such an impact on me. And it probably, you know, I'm having breakfast. So I told Johnny about the book too, but I'm having breakfast, and we're talking about these different topics. And you know, a terrible thing happened in Minnesota. I mean, it started to, you know, things started to happen, you know.
Well, one of the things too that another book that you love, and I talk about it a lot, which I never really, I didn't like the book at all. I'm not a good, I don't follow those kind of books. It's the 4 Disciplines of Execution, the 4DX. That book was really kind of altering for you, because it, I think, changed your company, the way you actually look at companies, the way you set goals within our own company, the way I do it myself. It really has impacted a lot of people. That's a book that you kind of recommend to a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I do recommend that one a lot. The really in the 80s, I read a book, The Game of Business, which is really the same as they didn't call it the exact same things, but it was very much like the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And when the 4 Disciplines of Execution took this stuff and made it really, really simple. And it really came from, you know, understanding that a system can bring results, and talent will exploit the system. And it started out with me watching, again, being a football fan, Bill Walsh taking these quarterbacks, 12 different ones, and when he put them into his system, which he calls the West Coast offense, right? Put them in that system, they suddenly played better than they ever had before. And I thought, wow, if we could have a system where I could make an agent or a manager or a CEO, and the 4 disciplines of execution. See, all leaders, everybody has this crazy strategy. They teach it in school and strategy. Everybody has a problem executing. And the 4 disciplines of execution is not based on strategy. It's executing. So it's basically focus, leverage, engagement, and accountability. So you focus on 1, 2, maybe the most important things, because it's important to say no to good ideas. So you focus on the best ideas, right? So that's discipline 1, which is so important. And we can use that to drive diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Focus. The next one is leverage, lead measures. What do I need to do to get to that goal? And that's make awareness, have the diversity courses, right? Have the on bias, you know, have the training, have all of these things. So it's leverage. What 1, 2 things I can do that's going to get me to that WIG, right? To that wildly important goal. The third one is the discipline of engagement. And that's, everybody got to know how well they're doing. That's why we keep score on how are we doing in hiring diverse people. I see a scorecard on how we're doing at diverse, because that drives engagement, right? And then the last one is accountability and creating that cadence. And that's why with you, with every CEO, with every department head on Monday, I have a call with everyone, right? And that's that cadence. And it should be done minimally weekly, okay? Daily would be better, you know, if you had your own little group, but minimally weekly, where you're saying, here's what I committed to do last week, whether I did it or didn't. Here's what I'm going to do this week. Here's the lead measure that I'm going to do I'm going to commit you to get to that, right? And then, you know, because we're a culture of improvement, we always ended on, what am I doing to improve so I'm better this week than last week? And that's been great. Look at Ray Mesa's down, what, 100 pounds just from pretty much having an improvement thing every week.
Yeah, and it's so it's something that when I first came on board, I'll be honest with you, I really resisted. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, what's this about? You know, but I will tell you, it has been the best thing I've ever done. I love our monthly, you know, I have three. Like, I don't have to go on all three, but I really like to hear what our companies are doing in the different divisions that we operate. And then also I like providing that, okay, this is what I have to do this week. It makes you really realize what's important that you have to get done, those three wildly important goals. And then you don't want to come and tell you, Gino, that I didn't do them, because you'll tell.
Yes, and you don't, but you also, I want you to be making the commitment to your team.
Yes.
Right? And to take it seriously. Like, we have some people say, oh, I committed to finishing this and I just didn't do it, like it's okay. Well, then you shouldn't have made the commitment, you know? If you said you're going to do it, you need to do it. Otherwise, make less of a commitment.
And that's really what I think is really important, because it helps us in the diversity, equity, and inclusion with the initiatives that we've got. If I'm going to say I'm going to teach these courses, if I'm going to touch 100 lives, if I'm going to go to NARA and be involved in that, it makes it a priority. And I don't want to take back my word, my commitment. That's the biggest thing. As believe it or not, we're almost out of time, Gino. We're on time. So which I know is your biggest thing too. So tell us, one of the things that I think is really important is making sure that we do move our D&I initiatives across whatever company you're with forward in order to advance them. So, you know, so that we can establish that culture, for example. So how do we move beyond just awareness, which we've done here, into action?
Well, again, step one is awareness. Step two would be figuring out what is the one or two most important things that we can do, right, to do that, and then set up the whole system of holding people accountable to doing that, right? If we're going to commit to having X number of book studies, or commit to going to X number of events, or commit to hiring X number of people, who then we have to find those lead measures, that means you better be searching in that area, right? You better be meeting those people. You better be seeing what's in your environment. So it'd be basically, I would look to you as the chief of diversity, equity, inclusion to come up with the 1, 2, maximum 3 most important things, okay, that we could do. And then we would do that throughout our network. We have diversity leads in every single company, and you can take it, you know, we can take it wide that way.
And I think that those are words that really are going to benefit everyone, because I think, you know, again, the book, the 4 Disciplines of Execution, if you haven't got that one, get it. That's really a really great starting point, because it helps you lay out the foundation that Gino just spoke about. And I think as we end, I always want to end with a fun question, Gino. And I know this is a surprise to you, but I know you're a huge sports fanatic. So what is your favorite sports memorabilia that you own? Because you have a lot of things I've seen in your home and the backdrop. And why? What's the favorite thing you own, and why?
Yeah, the favorite thing I own is a great picture of Dwight Clark, who was a dear friend that gave me on March 22nd, my birthday, and he wrote a super nice personal note on the thing. That's probably my favorite sports memorabilia that I have. There's also a picture of me and Dwight and Willie Mays when I got the catch together. So you had my favorite baseball player, favorite athlete of all time, and a dear friend who was also good. That'd be it too. But it would be something with Dwight, just because it's sentimental to me.
It is. And I know for those who don't know who Dwight is, and believe it or not, there may be people out there. Tell me again who Dwight Clark is and his background and how you really kind of met him.
Yeah. Dwight Clark was a wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, drafted in the 10th round, and we don't even draft 10 rounds, but is famous for this great catch called the catch, which is like the top 2 or 3 biggest plays in the history of the NFL. And just a great human being and a great friend, super duper loyal, great person. But he was a great friend of mine, and he introduced me to lots of great people like Ronnie Lott and people like Brent Jones. Even got to know me through Dwight, and just a dear friend. But played 7 years in the NFL, has 5 Super Bowl rings, 3 as a player, 2 as an executive, and lived right here in Capitola. In fact, my beach house is Dwight Clark's old residence. And my garage, which anybody stops by, 606 Burlingame in Capitola, is a shrine to my friend Dwight Clark. Because he just
Wow. And Gino, I got to meet him because he was at the very first conference I ever attended at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, and that was in Texas. And remember, we took, and he was out there. So that was
we rented the Dallas Cowboys
yes,
Stadium. Yes.
and I got to meet him, and I have a photo with him as well, and you as well, and it's one that I treasure, because I think it's very special.
Anything with Dwight is my special memorabilia. I've got great pictures of me and Dwight and Ronnie Lott and me and Dwight and Brent Jones and some of my friends and things like that. There's a ton of. One time Dwight took me to the tailgate for the players, and Dwight Clark is barbecuing for me and JT, and that was pretty cool.
That is so cool. It's just those relationships.
Somebody snapped a picture of it, right? And we've got Dwight barbecuing, and he's feeding his 2 buddies.
And I think that's really kind of those relationships that really make an impact and also have really changed your life, because it's brought other people into the picture that you've gotten to know and now always will remember that those relationships, because I know he passed away a couple of years ago. So anyway, Gino, I really want to thank you for answering that fun question as we end the show. And that actually wraps up today's episode of Diversity Matters. And all of you out there, I hope you found this episode insightful. Please don't forget to share this page with your friends and colleagues, because your support really means the world to us. And Gino, thank you again for participating in the launch of Diversity Matters and really opening up as to why diversity matters to you. And I really want to shout out to Alan Dalton, because Alan is always the phenomenal marketer, right? And he helped me come up with the Diversity Matters idea of the show because of the content, the how diversity matters and what diversity matters are. So, and I'm personally honored again that you were my first guest.
Yeah, that's another special person, Alan Dalton. And I have a basketball that he signed to my daughters when from the Boston Celtics, and that's a very special piece of memorabilia too. But he's quite a guy. So T, I would say that you are the Joe Rogan of diversity, equity, inclusion shows. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Gino. And all of you out there, thank you so much. If you want to stay updated on future episodes and exclusive content, be sure to follow us and join our series, Diversity Matters series.com. And remember the one thing that I always say, together we can make a positive impact by embracing diversity and fostering inclusion in our communities. Thank you to our viewers for joining the show, and join me next month on August 23rd, right here on this channel on Diversity Matters, as we hear from Johnny Johnson, which we talked about today. He's the CEO and president of World Class Coaches and the author of the book From Athletics to Engineering, 8 Ways to Support Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for All. So until then, be kind, be inclusive, and embrace the beauty of diversity. Thank you for tuning in, and see all of you soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Gino.